I can, yes. 1 second.
Okay.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Catherine Hecht. I'm the Executive Director of the Alexander Valley Film Society, coming at you today from my home office in Cloverdale, and I am so excited to introduce you to one badass babe, Dianna Cohen, the executive producer of The Story of Plastic, which we had the good fortune to watch together this week as a community. And in these uncertain times, boy, it feels good to think about being able to take action with something. So welcome to day, I don't know, 5 billion of sheltering in place. And without further ado, let's meet our guest today, Dianna Cohen. Hello, Dianna.
Hello.
Welcome, welcome.
Thank you. Happy Sunday.
Happy Sunday. I am just thrilled that you took the time to chat with us today. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
And I want to start also by thanking you and the other producers of The Story of Plastic, of making it so accessible to us as a community, being able to watch the film, having access to you to talk about it. And thank you also to Jenny Gomez, who's watching today, for connecting us with you on a personal level. And congratulations on the success of the film. What has the response been so far?
There's been an amazing response, but I think also, just for clarity, I'm a co-executive producer. I was not a hands-on executive producer of the project, but one of the wonderful things that happened is after the film was made, we got an opportunity to premiere it at the Mill Valley Film Festival last fall. And from that, we had conversations with Discovery, and Discovery made a distribution deal. So they're rolling the film out and showing it. It's available for people to see on Discovery Go. And they are going to be sharing the film in, I think, 143 different countries. And working with the producers, the hands-on producers of the film, Kyle Cadeau, and the director, Dea Schlossberg, and Steve Wilson, and the folks from The Story of Stuff. So there's a whole website for The Story of Plastic if people want to learn more about any specific things in the film, or if you don't want to watch the whole film and you want to share bits of it, there are all these wonderful shorter vignettes about the different people featured in the film, which can be found on The Story of Plastic and The Story of Stuff website. So all of that said, it's just totally terrific, obviously, that Discovery thought that this was an important enough subject, and that they were excited about the film, that they wanted to help disseminate it and share it. And between The Story of Stuff, we've all been working on getting translations done for the subtitles for the film in, I think, we have them in, I think, 20 different languages, and are working on more. But I helped organize translations in European Portuguese and Brazilian Portuguese. So trying to just make the film available to as many people as possible, so that everyone can start to gain an understanding of what it means, the way that we use plastic and single-use plastics, and what it is made from, and how this industry and this dependence on fossil fuels and natural gas and petroleum impacts human health and the atmosphere, and contributes to climate change and global warming through greenhouse gases from extraction through manufacturing, production, use, and then end-of-life waste management. Oftentimes that's incineration. So it's, of all the films that folks have made over the last 12 years that I've been involved in this issue, I think that this is one of the most comprehensive in terms of helping people understand and make those direct connections. So
I totally agree with you. I find the accessibility of the film high level. It's a low barrier to entry, high accessibility. And we need that. Like, it needs to be really spelled out for people. Although what I also love in the film is that it gives us, it kind of pops back and forth in the timeline, but it gives us these benchmarks of when the public perception tide started to turn. Also giving a little bit more context in terms of where the issues actually lie. I think it did an excellent job of framing that. And
Mm-hmm.
but before we get to some of the specifics, can you tell us a little bit about how you came to be involved with this particular project? Clearly, you had been in the space for a while,
Yeah.
but how did they approach you?
No, it's a longer story, but for the last, it's basically going on 30 years right now. I'm a visual artist, and I've been making work out of bits and pieces of plastic bags that I cut up and sew back together. So I make 2 and 3-dimensional pieces, and I show them in galleries and in foundations and museum exhibitions. And I'm making them mainly out of plastic bags that I'm cutting up. I'm sewing them back together. I use them like textiles. I use different color bags that I find or that people have saved and sent to me, text that I find on the bags, imagery that's printed on the bags. And so I've been making that work for nearly 30 years. And also I grew up here in Southern California. I'm in Los Angeles. So I grew up swimming in the Pacific Ocean, body surfing. When I was in my 20s, I became a certified scuba diver. When I turned 30, I learned how to longboard and started longboarding, so surfing. And I just kept seeing more and more plastic in the water, at the beach, when I'd travel in other parts of the world as well. And, in viewing this and in realizing that it was something of interest to me, and in watching some of the pieces I was making with my artwork begin to fissure, the bags in them, and break apart, I originally was excited and thought that the plastic was organic and ephemeral like us, and then started researching that and realized it was just breaking apart into smaller bits. At the same time, I'm seeing more and more piling up in the ocean at the beach and getting out into nature. And so I became interested in that. And then about 13, 14 years ago, I started hearing this, it felt like a lone voice. It was Captain Charlie Moore, who founded Algalita, who's one of my mentors. I started hearing him yell about this thing and say that we've got this disaster happening out in the Pacific Ocean, the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. He had named it. And he said, there's this accumulation happening. It's spread out over thousands of square miles. You see it on the top of the water, but it's also in all of the water strata. We don't know how much is in the ocean. It's on the ocean floor. So then I began to pay attention to that. And my original idea was to go out and clean it up.
Oh, right.
And I think there are a lot of people who are part of our coalition now who are still focused on cleanup, or, catching it in rivers or trying to clean it up from the ocean. And so originally I followed that track. But then as I began to follow that track, I realized, no, wait, this is like a Sisyphusian task. Basically, the example I like to give and that we use is, if you had a bathtub and it was filled with water and it was overflowing, would you take a teaspoon and start trying to bail it out, or a cup and start trying to bail it out? No, you would turn off the tap first,
Right.
And then you would address it. And so that's when I realized that focusing on cleaning it up wasn't the best, was not the most ideal way to solve the problem. And so I kind of went back to the drawing board, and I met other folks who were looking at this, and we decided to create a coalition together. So we founded Plastic Pollution Coalition back in 2009. And we did that because we wanted to create a kind of network or umbrella that could bring together, yes, folks that were concerned that plastic was impacting turtle habitat or impacting animals in the ocean or cetaceans, but also people who were focused on cleanup, as well as people who were focused on what are the health impacts of us eating and drinking all of our food and beverages wrapped in plastic, what's going on with the endocrine disrupting chemicals that we use to make plastic, who's working on policy and legislation to impact and affect bag bans and polystyrene bans and move us towards reusables and refillables and reboot the system. So it's kind of like, how do we create, what we did was we worked to create a coalition that could bring everybody together under one kind of roof. And, you know, I'm very happy that we did that. Of course, at the time, I had no idea that plastic was as big a disaster, as big a crisis as we found it to be. And although there's a part of me that gets excited when I read news and it says something as horrible as, wow, we're finding microplastics in beer, in honey, in, you know, samples of tap water from all around the world, in the top 25 brands of bottled water from around the world. I mean, there's a part of me that gets excited because I feel like, there, see, you know, we were right to be concerned about this. But then, of course, there's the other part of me that's just totally horrified, because I had no idea this was going to be so bad. And I mean, the crazy thing is that business and industry and these big companies that package all of their food and beverages in plastic are, I think, oh, I just realized I'm yelling with my headphones on. Sorry. Are somewhat.
It doesn't sound like that here.
Okay, good. They're somewhat, I think they're just, I don't even want to say they're somewhat, they appear to be unaware of the impact that their packaging materials are causing. But now it's turning out that maybe they're not really unaware of that, and that it's intentional. And that's why a big company like Coca-Cola, who they've been the top corporate polluter at the brand audits in beach cleanups from around the world of the last 3 years past. You know, is that because they brand their materials so well? That's probably part of it. But, you know, they're now stepping up and committing $1 million here and $7 million there and joining this group and joining that group. And it's all about cleanup. It's all about cleaning up rivers. It's all about, we can recycle better. It's all about the way that all of these groups continue to fund, and they're on the board of Keep America Beautiful. But none of that means that they don't even change one tiny thing about the way that they do business. For example, if Coca-Cola really cared, or Pepsi or Nestle's or any of these companies, they would figure out a way to connect the plastic cap to the bottle.
Right. You know, it's interesting. Some of those stats, and including the some of the stats you're citing, as well as the image of the bailing out the tub, are in the film. And that's one of the things that really struck me. Is I got, as the viewer, I got that there was an agenda that wasn't just about being a good corporate citizen. You know, it was much deeper than that. So it sounds like a lot of your vision and your research and your experiences did end up directly in the film.
Oh, well, we work with a number of people who are featured in the film.
Yeah. Okay.
Captain Moore from Algalita is featured in the film. So is Michael Doshi, who is their, I don't know if he's the educational outreach director for Algalita. Froylan Great from the Mother Earth Network and Gaia, the Global Alliance for Incineration Alternatives. That what he's talking about, which is zero waste cities, and he's based in Manila. I was in Manila with him a few years ago. That's one of the most amazing models I've ever seen. And I think we actually need to go beyond the concept of zero waste. I think we need to look at nature, and nature doesn't create any garbage. Something has evolved on the planet to utilize every piece of everything. I mean, I don't know if any of you guys have watched Fantastic Fungi yet, that film by Paul Stamets and Louis Schwartzberg, but it's such an amazing film. And to realize that mushrooms, which are this whole other class, you know, it's not an animal, it's not a vegetable, you know, it's like, what is it? Are these incredible, powerful things that can break down everything. You know, when I die, my body can break down and go back to the earth. When we're done using a plastic bottle, it's not going to break down in the same kind of time frame as a human body, an animal, a plant would. And that's concerning, since these are materials that we have figured out how to manufacture. So I just think, you know, I think plastic is a really incredible material, but I think when we use it and design with it with intended obsolescence in mind for single use, it's a highly irresponsible use of a valuable material.
Yeah. So when did your focus, were you working with the materials as an artist first and that sparked the interest in the environmental impacts of it, or was that happening at the same time?
No, I was working at it with it as an artist first, and just really the pieces I made initially, I think were really just a celebration of using the material and all the different things the material can do, and all the colors that it comes in. And again, the images that were printed on the bags, text that was printed on the bags, and kind of repositioning that to make it say things that I was thinking about and communicate things that I wanted to say. But when I started working with it, it was not from any kind of activism perspective at all. I mean, I was just celebrating the material. It's an amazing material.
Yeah.
It's allowed us to lightweight all this stuff. It's totally incredible. But I mean, my feeling is we should be designing with it things that we want to last for hundreds of years, not things that we're going to use once and throw away. And that whole model of intended obsolescence and throwaway single use kind of disposable concept and selling it to us as convenience, it should have been, I think it should have been illegal, you know?
Well, and what's so funny, well, it's not funny, but I think, hi, who's over there? Everything okay? Do you need a minute?
Yeah, no, sorry. Someone just walked in the front door. So I just,
I hope you know them.
I hope you put them on mute. Yeah.
Oh, no, yeah, I couldn't hear them through. Yeah.
Sorry.
Sorry. No, that's fine.
But I didn't hear you if you were just asking me a question. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, I wanted to go back to also, there was a TED Talk you gave 2010. Okay, so in the TED Talk, you also talked about the 4 R's. I don't recall the 4 R's being in the film.
They're not.
Okay, can you talk about those?
Yeah. So basically the concept of the 4 R's, we just took the 3 R's that are taught to kids, which is reduce, reuse, recycle. And we added a 4th R onto the front, which is we encourage people whenever possible to refuse plastic, to refuse single-use plastic. And, you know, it depends on where you live. In some neighborhoods and at some markets, you don't have a choice. Other ones you do.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I tend to mainly do my shopping at the open farmers markets. And luckily they were only closed for like 2 weeks here in Los Angeles, and they reopened again with appropriate social distancing. And I know I started out earlier on the call with you with my mask on, but you know, with masks. And so I mainly buy things at farmers markets, and I bring my own baskets and canvas bags and things like that with me. I tend to try to buy things only packaged in glass, if that's an option. And, you know, I mean, I'm not a vegetarian. My dad is, and I'm cooking a lot of food for my dad right now with the whole COVID thing. He kind of got stuck at my house when it all happened and didn't make it back to Boulder, Colorado with his wife where he normally lives. Oh, so I've been making vegetarian food for him, which is great because it means I cut up a lot of avocados, you know. It's like, he's pretty simple. He eats bread and, you know, I don't know. I mean, I think this is such an interesting year that we're living through. And I've always kept a garden, whether it's big or small, wherever I am. And my tomatoes, I have them in pots and they're doing really well. And I mean, I'm just excited. I haven't been home for this long of a period of time in 3 years because I was traveling so much for work and projects that we were doing. But it's, you know, it's nice to be home. I mean, I feel obviously I feel like privileged to be able to be home and have a nice space that has outdoor space too. And I know not everyone has access to a situation like that. But I also think that this is a great moment if you're able to slow down and think about what's important. A lot of people I know are planting food for the first time, and to make that connection and help teach their children to make that connection of where food comes from, that you grow it in the dirt in the
Yeah.
earth, and that it's important to take care of the soil and the air and the water so that we can thrive on the planet and life can thrive on the planet.
Isn't that funny? It really is about becoming mindful and more mindful of use, mindful of energy, mindful of source, and more thoughtful. And that's why I said, I mean, not that there's any perfect time to start becoming more active and more vocal in your community around issues like these, but this is part of that slowing down process, is having the bandwidth to say, hang on a second, this is a really big deal, and we can take steps to start to change it right now. Dianna, we have a question from Hillary from the far off Healdsburg.
I love Healdsburg.
Yay! She says, how will the drop in oil prices impact the production of plastic products? And will it put pressure to increase a bigger market for plastic?
Yes.
There you go.
My answer is unfortunately yes. You know, one of the problems and one of the reasons that the idea of recycling plastic is kind of is not reality. It's plastic is not for the most part recycled, is because it has no value. And recycled plastic or reusing plastic has no value or very little value because oil prices are so low that, and plastic is primarily made from byproducts of processing petroleum. So if you watch the film, you know that it's made from petroleum. And I think that the big petroleum companies see the writing on the wall with Teslas and these electric car technologies. They see people moving towards solar, towards wind, towards water power, wave power, and the writing's on the wall. And so their way of diversifying is to diversify into or to refocus their profit into making single-use plastics. And that's what's happening with these new ethylene cracker facilities where they broke ground and Trump signed a deal for one to be built, yet another facility to be built on the Gulf Coast, which is 66 miles long already in Houston. And then central Pennsylvania and the Ohio River Valley are being completely rebooted to produce plastic and ethylene crackers and frackers to make plastic bottles, which is insane and makes my heart goes out to people who live there, who are probably so excited after this dip in coal to have an industry and jobs for people, but they're going to have jobs from a toxic industry that is going to poison them all again.
Right.
And so I'm not exactly answering your question, but I mean, I'll tell you a couple things that are going on right now. The plastic industry and big plastic are absolutely capitalizing on COVID and the coronavirus and everyone's fear. And they wrote a letter to the head of human health services for the federal government asking to have all of the bag bans and polystyrene bans and plastic bans temporarily suspended right now. Yeah. And that's happening state by state. Not all of them, but some of them. And what they've really are trying to do is exploit our fear and what's happening right now to kind of inject or insert a fear of reusables. Yeah. And that's really dangerous because if you use reusables, you can wash reusables, you can sterilize them, you can put them through the dishwasher, you can wash them with hot water and soap and use them thousands and thousands of times. There's no comparison. And also their thing is not, I mean, what they're asking for is not based on science. If anything, there have been 2 scientific reports that show that COVID lives longer on plastic than on cardboard and copper. So they've looked at some other materials. One study said that COVID can last 72 hours on plastic, and another said it can live up to 9 days. They're also saying that it lives like 48 to 72 hours on steel as well. But steel, I use steel all the time and you can wash it. Wash it with hot water and soap. And so, and, you know, or you can sterilize it if it's in a medical situation. So, so there's that. And then another thing that's happening is big plastics asking for a $1 billion bailout right now from the federal government because they say that they're suffering.
Hmm. What is the lawsuit that if it's not the coalition along with other partners put together in April of this year?
Yeah, so there's a lawsuit that was filed by Earth Island Institute in Berkeley.
Okay.
And we are a project of Earth Island Institute, so we are part of that suit. It's against 10 top corporate companies that are producing plastic and advertise it as recyclable when it's not.
Oh, so it's clearly about the terminology.
It's not just about the terminology. I mean, you should take a look at it. It's longer than that, but
okay.
Yeah.
It's
about a kind of, you know, it was interesting so we're in California, you know, Kamala Harris, when she was our state, she was attorney general. Mm-hmm. There were these ads that were up all over the place in Los Angeles for a while you guys might've seen these. It was a plastic Dasani water bottle. Dasani is owned by Coca-Cola, growing out of a leaf. And they had a whole ad where like this plant grows and spins open and a plastic bottle of water comes out of it. Poof. And they had these big billboards with these petals of leaves wrapping around a plastic bottle. And she literally overnight made them take them down. She said it was false advertising.
That's what,
because plastic bottles don't grow out of plants and leaves. Right. Also, those bottles said that they were made with, and I love this, up to 30% recycled plastic. Up to 30%. It might have been 1%, might have been 2%.
Or 0.0004. Yeah. Dianna, we have another question here about, we definitely have a much more clear picture of who some of the bad guys are. Are there any corporations, and I say that, and I get it, we're not pointing fingers, the Film Society is not pointing fingers, but what, are there corporations that are doing a better job that we should know about?
I mean, I don't look at, I don't even know if I would say that these companies are bad guys, because they're not people, they're corporations. So I would just say that there are companies that are doing better and trying to do the right thing. That the writing's on the wall. And so one of the most important things that needs to happen is these big companies, some of whom I've mentioned, they really need to step up, and they need to step up in a way that is not greenwashing, but where they actually are going to be forced to change a few things about the way that they package their products and do business, which will cost them money, but they must do it to change, because right now, the way that they're producing packaging materials is not, it's not sustainable. And so, I mean, that is the main thing I would say. There are a lot of interesting things happening. There's been interesting legislation and policy passed in Berkeley, in San Francisco, for the whole state. And there are models like, there's a company called Vessel. I really like what they're doing. It's a reusable steel coffee cup, and it's a system, and you drop it off or you pick them up when you order a coffee or take a tea or a coffee. That is a project that started in Boulder, Colorado, and they're scaling up from Colorado to Northern California. That's very interesting to me. There's a lot of interesting stuff happening with seaweed and algae. There's a company called Lollyware that's doing straws that are made out of seaweed. And basically you could eat them if you needed to. I mean, I don't know that they don't taste like anything because they're not flavored, but you could eat them, and they go back to the earth, which is wonderful. And then there are things that human beings and my grandparents or great grandparents used their whole lives, which are wonderful solutions that exist all around us. Like I'm sitting in my friend's kitchen right now, and she gets her fresh juices from There's a health food store. I know they have one here. There's one in Hollywood that's called Erewhon, and they do glass bottles, and you have a deposit system and you return them. That's not some new program that nobody's ever heard of before. I mean, it's basically, there are also milkman delivery models like Loop. That's a pretty interesting model from TerraCycle from Tom Saki. And they do these beautiful steel containers with Haagen-Dazs, where you can buy the Haagen-Dazs in the refillable steel container, you pay a deposit, and then you can return that, or they'll pick it up in a special carrier when UPS goes by on your street. But granted, you're not going to be able to do that for every single product in a market, but I think those are really interesting models. My sister lives in Washington, D.C., and they have a milk delivery service that delivers to their door in glass bottles. And I grew up with that. I grew up with that in Hollywood. We lived in an apartment, and the milkman would bring these beautiful big gallon milk bottles that had a little paper foil top on them and drop them off in front in a little wire rack or in front of the door. So I think that with some thoughtfulness and with some investment and community support into the infrastructure that we need to support refillables and reusables, we have many of the materials that we already need. I mean, I've got ceramic bowls next to me. We've got ceramics, we have glass, we have steel, we have copper, we have wood, we have coconut, we have calabash. I've traveled to parts of the world where everybody drinks and uses a coconut for things, or people use a calabash, which is a kind of squash or a gourd. You know, we're literally bamboo. I mean, we're only limited, honestly, by our own imagination. And a lot of these things that I'm proposing may sound funny, but I mean, for hundreds and hundreds of years, they were traditional things that people used. In India, for many years, people used unfired clay cups to drink tea out of. And when they were done with the tea, they'd throw it on the ground, and you'd look down at the dirt underneath your feet. It was the same red color as the cup. And so the cup would just go back to the earth. Yeah. It's kind of beautiful. I mean, it's like kind of old school solutions is what I call them, but I love stuff like that.
But I also hear, what I love about this is I just hear the artist in you also embracing it and really vibing on it and passionate about it. So if you, and I'm looking at time, so we'll start to wrap it up. But can you tell us like where you are on your hope scale, like where you started? You've been doing this work how long? For 12 years? Well,
yeah, I've been doing the work with Plastic Pollution Coalition and concern about this issue and learning about plastic in the ocean for about 12 years. But my artwork I've been doing for about 30 years. So how do I feel about it? I don't know. For some freaky reason, I wake up every day incredibly hopeful that we have the ability to change things. And I feel like we've done this tremendous amount of damage. When I say we, I don't mean literally the people who are gathered together on this call, but I mean, the collective we have done this damage in the last 100 years. And now we need to pivot and shift the ship, turn the rudder on the ship and change directions and do things differently. So, I would say to everybody, do the best you can do. And if that means making a commitment to try and reduce the amount of single-use plastic in your life, then start there. If it starts with trying to remember to bring a reusable bag or a canvas bag or basket with you in your car, keep some on your bike basket, in your backpack, in your purse, on the back of the door, like whatever, however you go to a market, and even with this COVID stuff and them saying, you're not supposed to be bringing your own bags, I still bring my own bags. And I just say, hey, I brought my own bag. When they ask me if I want a bag, I say no. And I just hold it away from the counter and pack it myself. So, there are ways around everything. Again, like I wake up and I feel very hopeful. I've already seen a lot of change. I think the fact that so many people are calling this plastic and plastic pollution instead of litter, rubbish, waste, garbage, and marine debris is a huge step in the right direction. And also just for anyone who's interested, I mean, we have tons of content and wonderful blog posts and the latest news on our website, which is plasticpollutioncoalition.org, if you'd like to learn more about it. But there's also a piece of federal legislation, which is called the Break Free from Plastic Pollution Act. It was introduced in February by Udall and Lowenthal. And I know we're going through this unusual moment, but keep an eye on that. And if you can figure out ways to support it, that would be great. It's very comprehensive, and it's also has funding built into it to help rebuild and reshape existing recycling facilities that really are not able to recycle very much because there's not a market for this stuff. So it's not that the recycling facility is failing or the MRF is failing. It's that industry doesn't have extended producer responsibility, and they're not responsible for the packaging that they're using, and therefore they're not taking this stuff back. They're not required to do so. So it's a complex system, but you can look at the different pieces and the different bits of it, and you can see where you want to apply pressure as a consumer. You possibly want to boycott and not buy things that are packaged in plastic. You want to have conversations with farmers or people at your local farmers market or the markets or the health food markets that you go to, and ask them if they can order things or sell things unpackaged. Ask them if you can bring your own containers when you buy things that need to be filled, and if they have any kind of refill or bulk section. And so there are a lot of things we can do on a personal level, but we can do those things too in our community. We can do them if we're students, we can do them at our school. And if we're involved with a company or we own a business, we can look within our business and see how we can phase out single-use plastic within our business model. And then we can help support policy and legislation that move the needle.
I love it. I cannot thank you enough for sharing your expertise with us like this. I mean, it's as I said at the front of our chat, like it is such a good moment to be able to take action. It feels empowering, and that helps in a moment where so much we feel so powerless over so much. So we're going to do a lightning round to take us out.
Okay.
Okay. Dianna Cohen.
Yes.
Coffee or tea?
Tea.
Woods or beach?
Beach.
Pizza or pasta?
Both.
Pasta on pizza. And if you had an idea in the middle of the night, woke up to write it down, would you use a pencil or pen?
I would use anything that's next to the bed, but normally these days my eyesight's not 100% great. So I've been using a really big fat black marker.
Love it. I have a big red one on my desk that I use to cross off all the things that are done. It's very satisfying. Dianna, I thank you so much for taking the time today.
My pleasure.
With us, and the comments, there are more questions. I'm sorry we couldn't get to everything, but this has just been a delightful half hour, and you're just so kind to come. And thank you, Jenny, again for introducing us. So next week, we're going to be talking to Joel Stillerman, who is an executive producer and creative executive. Until then, everybody, please stay safe, do what you can to be a part of the solution here, and stay connected. And if no other way, please stay connected through film. We know we can always count on it. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great Sunday.
Bye.